So I know a lot of you have already seen my video on the all-new Honda Civic being tested in Sepang. How do I know? Well, because I've been called out for saying that I actually think it looks really good. And apparently a lot of you don't agree with me. I still stand by what I said. And I think with the number of this all-new Honda Civic on the roads now in Malaysia, I think most people also agree with what I said, but that's beside the point. The point is that since the launch of the car until today, we haven't actually been able to test it out outside of a controlled environment on the track. And obviously, driving on the track and driving on the open roads, there are going to be quite a lot of differences, not just in having to deal with traffic, but also road surfaces and noise and all of these kind of things. Today, we're actually going on a road trip with all of the other members of the media all the way to Penang to really test out how the all-new Honda Civic handles on the open roads. So without further ado, let's head inside and check out what's in store for us today. Okay, so two things. The first thing is, yes, I've had a tire change. Oh, that's because I'm wearing the Honda shirt, which is apparently the tire for the drive which everyone is wearing. So no, I have not magically time traveled to another day or something like that. Number two is we're actually on the highway right now, setting off to Ipoh as our first stop. There are a few things that I've noticed. And the first thing is just how good the sitting position is in this all-new Civic. First of all, you get to sit very low, which is what I like. But even though you're seated so low, you still get a very good view out the front. Honda says it's because they've actually moved the A pillars backwards, and I can definitely see the effects of that. View out front is very clear, as you might be able to see from my other GoPro. And out the side as well, I can also see the corners of the road, sort of like a slit in between the wing mirror as well as the body of the car. Now the seats itself, Honda says they've also slightly altered it to give it better support, specifically the side bolsters as well as the bottom. So on the seat bottom, they've somehow adjusted the geometry of the seat itself, and it's a bit hard to explain with words, but essentially it sort of feels that the rear half of the seat paddings on the bottom sort of curves outwards a little bit, to sort of give you a bit more support on your tailbone. So that is supposed to help with your posture, especially on a longer drive like today. And well, I really feel pretty good sitting in this car. And now the second thing that I've realized on about a 20 minutes drive so far, all on the highways, is that the new engine, which is the 1.5 litre turbocharged inline 4, and it's also shared across the entire all-new Civic lineup. Anyway, the engine now gets 9 more horsepower and 20 more Newton meters of torque compared to the previous generation model. And I think you can definitely feel it. Car feels very light-footed when you put down the accelerator. It just wants to accelerate, and it does so pretty gracefully. I'm following the lead car at about 140 kilometers per hour at this moment. It's still very easy to accelerate. Just slight prod on the pedal and the car just picks up speed very smoothly. And to be honest, engine-wise, very quiet as well. And while the engine does feel good, I think a lot of the improvements in terms of the feel while you're driving actually comes from the reworked gearbox itself. So while yes, it's still a CVT gearbox, I know some of you out there are already frowning your faces at the sound of the 3 letters, but well, believe me, it is actually a lot better in this all-new Civic. And honestly, I have no problems at all with the CVT gearbox. So far, I haven't noticed any sort of a rubber band effect or those kind of traditional CVT problems, let's put it that way. And to be honest, it's actually very responsive to your pedal inputs. So say I want to pick up pace right now, I'll just put down a little bit and it just jumps down a gear, almost like it's an automatic gearbox. And really, I think that's the whole experience of this CVT gearbox, is that if you don't tell people that it's a CVT gearbox, or if you don't specifically look out for all the CVT characteristics, honestly, for a lot of the driving situations that you'll find yourself in, it really behaves quite a lot like an automatic gearbox. And the last thing that I've realized so far is just how stable this car feels. The car really just feels so planted to the ground. You don't feel any sort of jitteriness or bounciness in a lot of the other lesser cars. And really, it's effortless driving at these kind of high speeds. And even those long sweeping corners that you get on highways, well, even taking those at high speeds really is so easy on this all-new Civic. There's only a slight hint of body roll, and to be honest, compared to the previous generation Civic, it's actually quite a lot better. Okay, so we have reached the last km before our first driver swap, and driving on these smaller town roads within traffic itself, the one thing that I really noticed is how nice the brake pedal feels. It's very linear, it's very solid. So when actually braking yourself, you can actually do it in a very smooth motion, which means driving in traffic, you won't get those head-banging accidental jam brakes, you know. In a lot of even European cars as well also have that issue, and well, Honda has done a brilliant job here. Okay, so I've been relegated to the back seats of the all-new Honda Civic, and well, in terms of comfort and NVH levels, I think in terms of NVH at least, there is a little bit of an improvement over the previous generation, especially in terms of the engine noise or the CVT whine. Honestly, that might be the largest improvement in terms of NVH in this car itself. So Honda says that they've added more spray foam in the pillars, more insulators in the firewall between the engine and the passenger compartment. I think in effect, you can really hear the differences. But when you're traveling on highways, especially at higher speeds, the road noise does tend to come in quite a bit. It's actually pretty noisy, I would say, but it's all only just from the road. I think in terms of wind noise, it's actually quite a lot better than before. But more importantly, on the rear seats though, it's actually just how easy it is for me to get comfortable over here. There's ample of space everywhere, and I think most importantly is actually the ride quality of this car. There's not much of the bouncing action going on, and really you feel actually quite secured seated at the back here. But more impressively is actually how it handles the city roads, the bumpy surfaces, because you don't feel the jitteriness almost at all. I would say it actually feels premium. Maybe something like a BMW 320i kind of premium. Yeah, actually. Alright, so I'm back in the driver's seat again, now on our last leg of the journey onwards to Penang. And we're just leaving the town of Taiping and driving through all these smaller kampong roads. There are actually a few things that stood out to me in terms of its driving experience. Number one is its safety feature, particularly the Honda Sensing suite of advanced ADAS system. So on the all-new Civic, Honda has actually upgraded the system to use a wide front view camera instead of the radar system from the previous generation. And their reasoning for that is to increase the coverage of the front view. Instead of just looking at the narrow lane in front, it actually looks at about 3 lanes wide. I can't really speak for how effective that actually is, but so far I don't think the system has actually misdetected anything. The few features that really actually kicked in while we were driving in the past 4 or so hours, firstly is the CMBS or collision mitigating braking system, or what we actually call autonomous emergency braking. And what I like about it is actually it's not overly eager in trying to slow the car down. In terms of detection, it doesn't pick up all of these stray objects like a passing motorcycle. It really is only focused on the car in front. And when it actually kicks in, it doesn't try to brake too early for you. It lets you know by a warning by quite a long distance before the brakes actually come in. So in city driving situations where you're trying to keep maybe a closer distance to the car in front, the car doesn't try to fight you in doing that. And on a related note, I actually quite like how the lane departure system works here. So instead of, say, the competitors such as the Toyota Safety Sense, where it kind of forcefully pulls you back into the lane, On here, it really just serves as a warning system where it vibrates the steering wheel a little bit to let you know that you're actually passing the lane markings. So if you actually intended to do it, the car won't fight you too much on it. And well, in city driving or in this kind of small roads, it really makes the driving experience a lot smoother, a lot more serene. And even when it does actually pull you back, it pulls it in a very gentle sense. And the next thing, of course, is the Civic's handling. And I really am not kidding when I say that the main comparison that I can think of after driving this car is the 320i from BMW, which is honestly one of the most balanced car that we've driven in the past year or so. First of all, there's the steering, which is very direct and is very sharp as well. So Honda says that they've done some tuning to the steering of the all-new Civic, where they reduce the lag between your steering input to the actual yaw change of the car. And I think it's really noticeable when you drive it back to back with the previous generation model, as we did in Sepang. In Sepang, the test that made me realize the difference is during the slalom test, and on top of the direct steering, the car just feels very alive, but at the same time also very on rails. And on top of the direct steering, the car also feels very alive through the B roads, but at the same time still handles and grips like it's on rails. It has a sense of naturalness or even fluidity when it comes to handling chicanes, kind of chained up corners. And really, I think it brings up a lot of joy when you're driving the car. And on top of the handling, there's also the new drive mode selector, which is a first ever addition to the Civic. And when you flick it into sports mode, the powertrain just perks up, especially the gearbox. And like I've said earlier, the gearbox already feels a lot like an automatic. And when you put it into sports mode, the feeling gets even stronger, because when you're doing some spirited driving and when you start braking a bit harder, the gearbox actually drops a few gears by itself to hold a higher RPM, to sort of use the engine braking to help to slow you down as well. Which is, honestly, I've never felt something like that in a CVT gearbox before. Alright, so we just crossed the second Penang bridge to now actually reach Penang Island. And as usual, the jam has already started. Well, I mean, it's 5:30, really can't fault them. But it does really live up to the name of Traffic Jam Island, as some people would call it. So anyway, we'll be slowly making our way through this traffic jam, which Google Maps tells us will take an additional 21 minutes. So yeah, we'll make our way through the traffic jam and I'll see you later. Good morning and welcome to day 2 of our Penang trip with the all-new Honda Civic. Well, last night, because of the traffic jam, we actually got back to the hotel pretty late, which means the entire night was pretty much a write-off. We didn't get to do much with the car. And it also rained, so pretty much the car was just parked right in front of the hotel, with us not being able to do anything. But that's okay, because today morning we actually managed to get the car out to a pretty scenic spot here in Kapal Sing, right by the Penang Bridge over there, to do some photo shoot and video shoot. So while we're here, I figured let me take you through a few interesting points of the all-new Civic. Now, the first one comes in the form of the laser brazing technology that Honda is so very proud of. So what it is actually a laser joint system that combines the two panels here together. And what's new on this all-new Civic is actually the technology has been upgraded to allow for a very shallow joint over here to overall help increase the sleek, clean look of the car. Well, to me, the most important thing about this technology is that there's one less rubber ceiling for me to worry about in the future. And just for a point of comparison, I actually went to have a look at the Honda Accord's laser brazing technology, which I will overlay the B-roll now. Laser brazing technology joint is a lot deeper than what we have here on the all-new Honda Civic. Okay, moving on to the second interesting bit on the all-new Civic. It's actually found in the wheel well over here. So it now comes with what Honda calls the HEM technology, which essentially folds the sheet metal back up against itself, creating more clearances over here. So as a result, you're able to push the wheels further outwards by up to just a couple of millimeters. But on this all-new Civic in total, I think they've added up to 6 millimeters in terms of tread on the rear axle, if I'm not mistaken. And in addition to just making it look a lot sportier because it's now almost flush to the bodywork, it also helps with the car's handling and stability performances. Just two very little minor details, but it shows how much effort Honda has put in for this all-new Civic. Even though it's just a C segment, it's probably one of their most important cars in the model lineup. Alright, at back here, if you're wondering, this is about what the boot space is like for 3-person on a one-day trip. But be aware, we bring a lot of camera gears and all of those kind of stuff in here. But it's a pretty big and usable space, and we can just chuck everything in here and leave the cabin in front completely empty. But just if you so happen need a bit more space at the back here, there's actually two quick release levers over here to fold down the rear seats to let you through load all of your longer items to the front. Alright, now sitting on the inside, again, I'm not going to bring you to too much detail. If you want that, you can check out our 5 things video. But for this vlog, I'm just going to bring you through some of the things that I really like about this interior, with the first one being this very clear 9-inch infotainment display. But unlike before, which pretty much was almost like a aftermarket system, this here is completely OEM, coming from the factory. And the best part about this is it's really smooth in operation. Everything is very clear, everything is well thought out, well designed. And if you look closely, the graphics and all are actually very clear. The display panel itself also incredibly clear. And yeah, it's just completely a joy to use. And because it's completely integrated with the car, you also get stuff like your trip computer built into the infotainment display instead of just relying on your screen over here. And as a bonus, it even comes with wireless Apple CarPlay connectivity. So yeah, my phone is over here, it's completely unconnected, but the Apple CarPlay is already displaying on the center display over here. But since it's already a wireless CarPlay system, I really just wish that Honda actually gave us an extra wireless charging pad here. So when you come into the car, you can just chuck it into the wireless charger, use your Apple CarPlay, and when you get out of the car, you still have a full battery to use. Now, because this is the RS variant, we actually get the larger 9-inch infotainment display unit. On the entry-level variant, you actually get a 7-inch unit with no wireless Apple CarPlay, only with wired. But still, I think the display graphics and all are still going to be very clear. Remember when I said it's well designed? Well, check this out. There's even a physical knob for your volume, your track forward and backwards, as well as your home and back button. Those little small items really just add to the whole functionality of this system, and it's really simple but works very well. And while we're speaking about physical dials, just check out how good these ones feel over here. You know how all these new cars nowadays are going for the haptic touch buttons and all of those? When you're actually driving on the road, these kind of physical dials really just make everything so much easier to use. And even with physical dials, it can still look very modern as well. And there's even a little small display in the middle here to show you the fan speed of your air conditioning system. Car makers, really please get back to these physical dials because they are just so much better. And while we're still talking about the aircon, for some reason Honda decided to drop the dual zone climate control system from the previous generation, and on this all-new model there's only a single zone. Well, personally it's really not that useful to me, but still it's a selling point for the car, and some people are definitely going to find it a bit disappointing that they removed that. The Honda Lane Watch camera on this all-new Honda Civic has actually improved by a lot. The clarity of the camera, as well as I believe the wide angle lens of the camera, have both helped the whole system to be a lot more useful than before. And although I think I still prefer a traditional blind spot monitor with the light warning being on the mirror itself, I think this here is a pretty close second, and I can definitely see its usefulness. So that's pretty much it for the interior, and I think overall it's actually a huge upgrade over the previous generation model in terms of design, in terms of layout, in terms of functionality. Driving this car for the past 2 days through highways as well as the smaller town roads, or even the traffic jams in Penang, the one word that I keep coming back to is really effortless. Effortless in a way that it feels the car rides over humps really easily, and it handles these highway high-speed corners without any fuss at all. And in terms of noise performance, honestly, when you compare this to the previous generation, it really is leaps and bounds more quiet. But other than just comfort, it's also effortless in its powertrain, because it really is so easy to pick up pace. Just prod the accelerator a little bit and speeds just build and build and build in a fast way, but also at the same time in a very gentle way. And last but not least, it's also effortless in a sense that it helps you drive with its advanced driver technologies, particularly the level 2 autonomous driving capabilities. And honestly, this whole thing just takes away a lot of the stress in long distance driving. So, is the Honda Civic a worthy car to buy? Well, after driving it for 2 days on a proper day-to-day kind of usage as well as highways, I'm inclined to say yes. And if you're looking for a C-segment sedan under about 200,000, well, I think the Civic is still your best bet. It's been so popular here in Malaysia, and it's popular for a reason. And on this latest generation, Honda, I think, has really upped their game and made it even better in more ways than one. I mean, sure, the pricing has crept up a little bit, but with all of the new technology that you're getting, a even more powerful engine, and honestly, just a way better driving experience, I think the price is actually quite worth it. And to be honest, even I am a bit tempted to get one for myself. Maybe 2 or 3 years from now, a second-hand model. But anyway, we're just gonna push on and try our best to beat the traffic when we get back to KL, because it's about 4 o'clock now, and it says that we still have about 2 hours of drive left. So I'm gonna focus on this, and that's about it for the video today. So if you liked it, of course, as usual, click on the like button below, because that really helps us out. Or if you have any comments as well, leave it down below and I'll read through it as much as I can and try to respond to your questions about the all-new Civic. As usual, click on the subscribe button if you haven't already, and of course that little bell icon beside it to get the notifications to all of our latest videos. This is Woon, I'll see you in the next one.